special workshop of the Carrabelle City Commission. It's Thursday, April 21st at 3:31 p.m. at the Carrabelle City Hall. And Commissioner Allen is getting a call, and we'll let him take that. We don't need to say the invitation and pledge. We just did that at our special.
Ditto.
Okay, ditto on that.
Ditto, Lord.
And then our first order and only order of business is item 1, discussion regarding the noise ordinance. There will be no action will be taken today. We're just going to have a discussion regarding that. So, does anyone have anything to say starting out?
Are we getting any complaints?
Well, I'm not real sure. And I met on the morning of April the 19th, on Tuesday morning, with Bo May and Mr. Eric Pfeiffer and Skip Frank and Chief Huntings. We had just a little meeting, a little pre-workshop, and we went over, and everyone, and Bo May is out of town. He had to go out of town for some medical reasons. I thought Skip would be here, but I guess he's satisfied with what we talked about. I spoke with him by phone yesterday. And we hashed it out. We spent almost 2 hours talking about it, and everyone discussed their issues and their personal issues. And so
two people has issues with it?
Well, we went ahead and worked something out here, and it seems like that Mr. Pfeiffer is happy with it. We have a noise ordinance. What I did, I called, Carrabelle does have a noise ordinance.
Oh, yeah, they've always had that.
But it addresses mostly the residential area. It doesn't really address our open air restaurants and businesses that we have here in Carrabelle. And so Mr. May and Mr. Skip Frank, they were amenable. We really had a good discussion. We came to some good terms to address those businesses in the commercial mixed-use area. And it's really not bad, Miss Olivia, if you would take a look at what we discussed and kind of what we came up with. There you go. And would you pass this down to?
I just don't want to see no businesses closing
No, we
because
don't.
one person can't go to sleep before 2 o'clock.
No, we don't. And the goal is, up there at the top, and they all knew at the beginning of the meeting, when we agreed on the goal, was not to shut down any business or event, but to develop guidelines that would allow open-air restaurants and businesses to provide entertainment while being considerate of the close neighboring residents and hotel guests. And so we all agreed to that, and then we worked on. And I do want to say that I called over to Appalachian, talked to Ms. Lee Mathis about their ordinance that was presented to us. And their ordinance is really geared toward moving vehicles with loud noise in the residential area. And that's why they developed it. They don't have residents in their commercial district, and all of their amplified music is in closed buildings with solid walls. If they have open air amplified music, they require a special permit. So, and we don't do that. Our noise ordinance doesn't address that. So we talked about developing a noise ordinance specifically for the Carrabelle business and special events that are operating in our commercial residential district as shown on the existing land use map in the comprehensive plan. And the ordinance would pertain to noise from commercial businesses and special events only. And the noise would allow for reasonable methods. The chief was there to represent the police department because this Carrabelle's ordinance is very difficult for the police department. If we go with Carrabelle's ordinance, it would be too difficult for the police department to.
Oh, yeah.
So we want to develop something, and everyone agreed on a method of measurement that the police department would be able to
Yeah,
do.
could you imagine calling the law every time somebody rode by your house? Because you live on a major road that I know you hear during the night. That's way louder than whatever fathoms.
Oh, I know it. So, but we want to try to develop something that would be not put the businesses out of business, and the police department can work with it, and folks would at least know when the music is gonna stop. You know, they wouldn't have to think that it's gonna go till 4 o'clock in the morning, which is really too late. 4 a.m. is too late. And everybody agreed to that. And then we would need to, because this, if we're gonna have a noise ordinance, the Carrabelle noise ordinance that we have right now is, like I say, is difficult for the police department to manage. So develop a second noise ordinance for all of Carrabelle that would be focused more towards the common noises that cause disturbances, like boom boxes or instruments, TVs, CD players, vehicles, delivery trucks, you know, construction equipment, and that kind of stuff, lawn equipment. And that would address, you know, disturbances that are not associated with the open air restaurants and businesses in the mixed use district. And so we had some suggestions. Of course, we're gonna need, if we, you know, have ordinance or two, it'll have to have a list of definitions. And then on the back side, we all came up and agreed with days of the week, and this coincides with when they're allowed to serve alcohol, these days of the week. For restaurant and bar events from 10 a.m. to, and we're gonna measure, everyone agreed that we would measure from the receiving land of complaint, not at the, you know, 2 inches from the bandstand, at the property line. From 10 a.m. to midnight, 65 decibels at the receiving land. And then from midnight to 10 a.m. on these days here, so they're allowed to serve alcohol on these days to midnight.
Oh, I thought it was till, oh, okay, that's Sunday through Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then from midnight to 10 a.m., they're generally closed because they're not, you know, they're a restaurant, they're not serving alcohol. And, if, you know, so we can, you know, the chief would say, well, they're closing at midnight, you're not gonna hear the music. He needs a way to tell them they're gonna, you know, they're gonna be closed. And the hotel managers need a way to say, well, they're gonna be closed in an hour, so, you know, it'd be finished in an hour if it's that bad. But they haven't had a lot of complaints as far as I'm understanding.
Yeah.
And then,
No, we hadn't got any lately that I've seen on any day at all.
and then for Friday, Saturday, and Christmas Eve, these are days that are laid out in the alcoholic beverage ordinance for times of service. 10 a.m. to midnight, still 65 decibels, just like this one. And then from midnight to 2 a.m., they would, you know, it would go down a little bit. But now remember, this is from the receiving land. And then from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m., no music would be allowed because they should be closed. And the method of measurement is there. It should be according to the National Standards Association. Both of our ordinances say that we have before us. And it should be reasonable enough to allow the police department to calculate an average sound level to provide a proper representation of the sound source within a reasonable amount of time. The microphones should be equipped with a windscreen and positioned so it will not create any unnatural enhancement, and that is in both of these ordinances. Or diminution of measured sound. Measured for a length of 1 minute to calculate an average decibel sound level. And have you seen the decibel meter?
No.
Okay. Do you have that decibels meter?
I've got it every month.
Okay, maybe we'll have you bring it in a few minutes. Hold meter at approximately waist height, pointing in a direction as the crow flies toward the property emitting the noise. So, say this is the property emitting the noise, and this is the property that's complaining. The police department would go to this property and take their decibel meter, point it towards the noise at the closest property line, you know, about waist height or something.
Oh, okay.
And then they would take their reading and, you know.
Okay, I understand. I didn't know, well, you explained that one better, because I was thinking they would go to the edge of the property line that the music
Emitting
was
noise,
on.
no.
But now I know what you're saying, to the complainant.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was in the original proposal, that it would be
Yeah.
at the property line, but this is an suggestion that.
That was at one, the meeting before
Decide.
last.
And actually, in this one that came from Apalachicola, it says right here, the measurement shall be made at or beyond the real property line of the property on which sound is generated or on the receiving land as appropriate, approximately 5 feet above the ground. Now, I asked Lee Mathis, I said, you know, why does it say that? Why are you gonna measure either from the line on which the sound is generated or on the receiving land? She said that is in there because they were going after vehicles with boom boxes. And the vehicles are moving, and the police department might have to chase the vehicle down. And so, you know, they can't, you know, how can they, can you understand what they're having? They have a problem that we don't have, unfortunately, so they're trying to
And we
address
have
it.
a problem, it just ain't worth going after.
No, well, if they, you get a fellow that goes to work in the morning, comes home in the evening, and he's got a loud vehicle, and that's the only time you hear it, and we can all deal with that, we don't have a problem. You know, the guy's trying to get to work.
Well,
whatever.
y'all don't live by my neighbors. Right, Gary? If I called the law every time them kids come down that road, they'd stay busy, because we live right between them. They live right between me and Gary here. And it's all night, all day.
I see one problem with this, we talked about it the other day,
Okay, what's that?
and me and him were talking about the level that you have it at 65. They'll never reach that.
You know, the two other fellows, Bo and Skip, wanted it to be 70.
They hadn't went out to reading, all I can say. Yeah.
Well,
And him just talk
Well,
about
but
it.
it's not a problem with me though.
Yeah, I'm sure. But
and what we can do, we said we would practice, I haven't gotten to that part, we'll practice and see, you know, we're not gonna do this today, we can't take action anyway. But kind of just, they're gonna go and take measurements here and there and keep a log, I guess, so.
Yeah, well,
Oh, you mean the music won't reach 65?
I mean, we stand at his front door, he's barely over that now, at his front door. So the closest resident over Skip Lane, if it ever got over that,
It would be really loud.
it would be,
It'd have to be like 130 or something.
But they agreed to it.
so, and I don't think that he would do that and intentionally, but if you get somebody else that comes in here
Like
and they're
me?
playing their music,
I would
that,
probably do it.
at 100, I mean, we'd barely be able to enforce it
Uh-huh.
at that level.
But 55 on the low after midnight is very, very quiet. I mean, this room is probably almost 50.
And actually, I asked Eric to bring his tablet with his sound decibel meter app, and if you could put that on
So
and
you
come
can get
show
an
the
idea.
commissioners what, and we'll have to be quiet so that we can see what the ambient noise level is. in
Well,
this
that's what I said, you have to establish the ambient noise too, because
Yeah,
sometimes
it's-
the ambient noise is just as loud as the noise.
I'll read that next.
That's what you're looking at
That's outside your place,
there. No, that's right now, right here.
right here. Oh, good.
That's what you are.
Click in there.
Yeah, I get 45 to 50 over here.
That's what number, if you talk, it goes up to like
That's just air
65
conditioning.
right there. That noise right there would be over the noise limit. That's your average right here, but when I'm talking, so anybody speaking is gonna be around 60.
So let's say your refrigerator running in your house is, if you're in your kitchen, it's gonna be most likely louder than you would hear that music outside.
Oh, I agree with you.
And you can't go inside and measure because every structure is different. They may have their windows open, the windows may be cheap windows like in my house, or they may have a brand new house with sprayed insulation and double pane windows, you can't hear a thing. So that's why you measure outside.
But it's not gonna be checked unless somebody
They have a
calls in and
complaint.
complains.
Mr. Hartman said that the code should be, or ordinances enforced with a complaint. They're just not gonna go around and check and then come, they need to have a complaint.
Right, I would hope they wouldn't do that.
I think I'll just get a text.
So what was the problem? Okay, all right, we talked about that, 65 decibels. So we said, and it was requested that an ambient noise sound level needs to be established either before or after the measuring of the offending noise. That way, they can measure this ambient noise, and if the ambient noise is loud or greater than the supposedly unwanted noise or music, then their complaint is unfounded. You know, they can say, well, your air conditioning running outside here next to your house is louder than that music is. The noise, are you okay. And then the location of measurement will be at the origin of the complaint, which will be the receiving land. The complainant must occupy the resident at the origin of the complaint or operate an open commercial business at the origin of the complaint. Measure at the closest receiving land property line to the land emitting noise. Do not measure in a public place or public right-of-way where the complainant does not reside, or at an unoccupied residence, or where the complainant does not own or operate a business, or where a complainant is not conducting his or her business during posted business hours, or where a place of business is closed. And the reason we have that is because the chief was worried that someone may complain at their house and not, if the complaint may be unfounded, and they may get in their car, he said, and go to the ice machine and complain. And that's not right.
And they will.
And that's from a commercial, that's from in a residential area, though. Like you wouldn't check it in a commercial area. Other than Skip, because he's kind of right on the edge right there.
But if someone from the residential area, I mean, you would have to be really loud for someone in
Right.
a residential area. And if you measure, if you have these decibel levels outside, you're barely gonna hear it on the inside. Greg turned our boom box on and put it at 65 and went outside to our property line, and I stayed inside at the window closest to where he had that radio playing, and I couldn't hear it inside. Oh, Michelle's neighbors thinking. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so, and I have heard fathoms of like this off in the
Three
distance,
rivers in
but
here.
when I go inside and close the door, I can't hear it,
That's right.
especially in the summer.
Well, it's the same with my house, I can hear it, I know it's there, that's all I can say. But I go to the house, it's not there.
And we have to, you know, Carrabelle has these open air restaurants and businesses, and sometimes we have concerts. We're gonna have a Tom Mason band this weekend, and it's gonna have amplified music. So, and we can't shut down the businesses. They provide a lot of jobs, a lot of sales tax, bring tourists, and those tourists and people that come from the outlying areas to these businesses spend money, stop at the IGA, whatever. And the folks are gonna have to realize we're a tourist town, a beach town, a tiki bar kind of a town, and
Like Panama City Beach, they let them drink again.
oh, they are. Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, you know, you just can't afford to put businesses out of business.
I've got a question. Has the city received any official complaint from anybody like we would do on trash or anything, that they turned in something specifically to the city that these would cause the code enforcer to go out and check?
I don't know, now, Commissioner Allen.
I'm asking.
Okay.
Of course.
What was it?
Has anybody filed an official complaint of the noise, or is it
No.
just
No.
people talking about it?
No, just people talking. I haven't had any phone
I
So
mean,
how did it all come up?
I've had one or two people
Skip
talk to
Franklin
me about
been
it.
fussing about
Oh,
it.
And
no,
that's-
Commissioner
but-
Allen
And
brought
I
it up.
suggested that they go
Yeah.
to the city and put
And
an
there's
official
Skip that said
complaint,
something about it.
but they haven't done that. They're not gonna do that. They're gonna call.
But now, why did you bring it up in the first place?
Because someone asked me to.
Okay, so Commissioner Allen requested it to be on the agenda.
And we actually bought the decibel meters because of the trucks, the loud trucks.
That's what we bought it
To chase the trucks down.
for. We had a lot of complaint, noise complaints, mostly on the
You ever
last
used
Trent's.
it at your house?
Trent's truck was one we got.
Yeah,
most
the
complaints.
Jeffries.
Church truck is gone.
Yeah, no, it's gone.
Where's it at?
He traded it on.
Oh, that blue one's just as loud.
Oh, it ain't that loud.
It's
It ain't
not that
loud.
loud.
No, it ain't.
No.
I started working in yesterday,
Just one complaint that I got was completely unofficial. It just came up in the conversation. And, you know, it was asked if I'd check into it. So that's what I did, that's what we did.
The only real
We done
complaint
it,
is-
and
And
that's.
so now we've had it on the agenda 1, 2, 3 times, and, you know, by being it on the agenda, we have to deal with it.
We've dealt
On
with
the
it.
agenda-
I think
agenda,
we deal
we
with it
have to deal
honestly
with it.
and fairly. And
The only real complaints we got for us coming from a business like that was over at the fish camp. When they were in operation, they'd have them late at night after hour party. Now they're closed down, and eventually they will open back up.
Now, I got a lot of complaints on them when they were opening. It wasn't always late at night, but it was, they're right there.
It was
They're
the
right
people
on
that
top.
bought the condos right by a restaurant.
Trying to get some relief.
Now, you own Fathoms, and you own,
I don't know anything, I'm just a resident here.
oh, okay.
Would you like a copy of what I was just reading?
Yeah, sure, I'm sorry.
Okay, we got plenty of them. Thank you, Jerry.
So what do we do here?
Okay, I'm sorry, my name's Adam Hudson, I live at 706 Level Avenue. I came along more out of curiosity. I want to complain about noise sometimes. I will say that I can hear Fathoms a little bit of my house outside when the wind's out of the south, but I have no problem with it.
Yeah, 'cause you live right by me, so I know you don't hear it that much.
No, it's not an issue. An issue I do have with noise is people's dogs all night long.
That's mine,
Those are your dogs?
probably. I got hunting dogs.
Okay.
You moved to a hunting community.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hunt as well.
You live toward Three Rivers.
I live across the street from the Peak Mall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my dog you hear. If you go behind your house, you're about
Yeah.
10 feet from my house.
Actually, you want to be specific, the dogs that are the problem right now are actually on level.
Oh, the ones right beside you.
They're about 4 or 5 houses down.
I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
they're never let out. They're just, But
Yeah.
I didn't even know that Carrabelle had a noise ordinance, so I just.
I'm gonna leave that down.
It don't matter, I won't be 65 decibels. They won't behave that
And
loud,
I
but
don't
they
know.
are aggravating.
Is there any way you can shut them off?
No. Mine's not that loud, not near as loud as Trenton's is beside me.
Well,
Mine
Fred
gets
lives
bad
next to me,
every
and
day.
He's got a pen, or Big Fred, and his dogs are loud. I've got a pen full of dogs, and they're loud.
Well, that's 3 of them right behind
I got a
you.
Jack Russell, he'll put, he'll run a dog to meter, I believe.
But you probably hear mine, cause if you go out your back door and go through them woods right there about 10 feet, you'll run into one of my dog pens. And there's 3 of them back there.
So what do we do here?
Yeah, that's what I was about to
Puzzles
ask.
for the dogs.
Well, we're not discussing that particular part. We're just discussing right now a noise ordinance that would be specifically for commercial businesses and special events operating within the commercial residential mixed-use district.
Now, I had this in my file proposed, and it has the Apalachicola thing in it. Is that the one that came from them?
You mean came from where?
Apalachicola.
Yes, this one came from, let me see, Apalachicola, 2-0.
But it's been,
Oh, it's been, yes, that's the Apalachicola.
But it's
I
been-
didn't do that.
Oh, okay.
But that came from the attorney like that.
Oh, okay.
So we know that's the Apalachicola ordinance.
Okay, yeah, because it says in here Apalachicola.
Yeah.
So we take this ideas and put it in, have the lawyer draw up a proposal with this information in it?
We could, but we can't take action on that. We would
No,
have to.
but I'm just thinking that's where we're headed though.
It could be, we will have to take action at our
Okay.
city meeting. And meanwhile, we can let the chief and his staff take some
Do
readings
further testing.
and see, just see. And I think that Skip and Bo are gonna take some readings and download an app to your phone, a decibel app to your phone. Greg has one on his. It's interesting. Yes, it's very, and measure your dogs.
The one on my phone reads louder than that one, I think it might be the case. you may make it kind of amplified, but it's like 6 decibels higher than that one. But it is for free.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
it,
feel no good on my phone.
It
But
would-
not really, my dog's really ain't as loud as my neighbors, the Chiefs.
it would give the, it
Well, you
would,
know, you have to listen to my wood player, you know.
it would give the police department some guidelines to go on. We know, you know, that the police department can't ask anyone to turn anything down or do anything for anybody unless there's an ordinance. So they can't do anything. One of these ordinances talks about all these fines, you know, which, is it the Appalachia, it's got like a 500, 200, you know, every incident. And we haven't discussed, oh, here we go, fines on this one. You know, we're not getting into that at this point. It doesn't seem necessary.
But everybody's okay with this.
It seems like it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I would like to have it written in that if somebody, if the same person calls 6 times a night, which nobody's calling, but when that happens for my business or whoever's business, if they're called and they call and they call and the chief has to go out and take a reading and it's not too loud, they come out and check the reading, and they have to do that repeatedly after so many times, they should be.
They will.
Are not
They,
allowed.
yeah.
I did put that down
They've
here.
actually, in some cities, levy a fine against the person calling if it's just a nuisance call over a period of time.
Do you see that, Mr. Hartman, where I put that at the bottom?
I did.
You know how
You talked about that, yes.
Yeah, create wording that addresses those
Yeah,
making
even she's got it,
continued,
didn't you?
unfounded, and or unwarranted complaint. And then institute a record or a log book that would indicate the number of complaints, locations of complaints, and the names of businesses creating the noise disturbance. I don't know if the police department would do that, or you could report it to the city clerk, and she could keep that log, you know, maybe once a week or something, you know, you can report what your calls on something like that, and let the city clerk keep the log. And then, you know, they can call the sheriff department. A lot of them have, I've heard a couple of folks say to me, since we've had this on the agenda, well, I can't call anyone. I can't complain because the phone doesn't answer at the police department, or and I can't call 911, but you can call the sheriff dispatch number 24 hours a day, and it's not an emergency. A noise complaint is not an emergency. The police department.
697-2113 is the
The
local number, and 670 is the East Point number. And they got a
So, you know, take it with you and look at it and make your changes, or, yeah, and we'll have, put a copy in Commissioner Wallace and Mathis's box and let them take a look at it and see what they think, and see what kind of readings we're getting over the next few weeks, and we'll put it on the agenda again in May.
I'm not gonna be here tomorrow night. You'll get that check.
Sounds like a
Okay.
plan.
A big band.
Okay. All right. And I want to thank Eric and Bo and Skip and Chief, you know, for helping us work this out.
I've gotta go, I've gotta work this weekend, but one night you have a band, I'm gonna come down there. I ain't never been down
I've
there.
never been there. Johnny never gonna play
I want
Saturday.
some August.
Yeah. We'd love to
Tell you
know.
what, wait till I get them karaoke guys down there and start showing off. I mean, that's the hoop, you know that?
Oh, you all right, Cap?
Okay, then.
Something about me.
Is it time to adjourn?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then, does anyone else have anything to say? All right, then, we're adjourned. Without motion.